Chapter number 4. John chapter number 4. Now, as we all pass through this life, we must deal with a gnawing reality within our souls, and that is that we all have emotional needs that need to be met in order for us to function properly in our day-to-day life. Every person here today, you've got an emotional set of needs that you have to have met if you are going to function properly, function sanely, if you will, throughout your life. And people all over the place are looking for something to meet those innermost needs. The things most people, however, resort to often cause them to defraud themselves emotionally, defraud themselves physically, and still bring no real and lasting fulfillment or peace within their souls. As a result, people struggle to cope with life's difficulties and just life's realities. They don't have their needs met, so they can't face the realities that they see in their day-to-day life. They live life disillusioned and empty, dependent on undependable people and undependable circumstances, which leads to great insecurity and instability throughout life. And one of the most powerful truths about biblical Christianity, not rock and roll Christianity, not traditional Christianity, biblical Christianity, is that we worship a God who desires to meet those innermost needs. And that is the crux. That's the thing that sells Christianity the most, biblical Christianity the most, is the fact that we have a God that meets the innermost needs of the heart. Doesn't just placate somebody or scratch a religious itch, but actually meets those things that are placed within us, so that we can function in our day-to-day life amongst a world that's completely messed up by sin. And that's the power of real Christianity. And that's something real Christianity as a whole needs to get back to in our day. Is start focusing on meeting the inner needs of people's hearts more than anything else. And God is a God who will do that for us. In our text, we see a lady here who has some inner needs that are not being met. And she was striking out as she was pursuing them until the day she met the Lord. And things would change everything. John chapter 4, we're going to just read verses 1 through 15 here today. This message is a little introductory to the series I've started here called The Need Meter. We see a lady that's going to get her needs met. John 4, verse 1, it says, "When therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee. And he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof, and himself, and his children, and his cattle? Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him, a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. As I mentioned, today we're going to be starting a new series at this hour. I call the Need Meter, how God can meet our needs. And we're going to learn from God's Word how that can take place. And today is just a little bit of an introductory. We'll spend probably more time away from this passage than in today at least. But I want to address this subject because I think it's one of those things that is very important for those who do not know Christ as Savior to come to understand, and those who are saved, they need to comprehend this, because if you don't know how to get your needs met from God, you will live a life, a carnal life, just like a lost person would, and you will never enjoy the benefits of being saved. And this is one of the greatest ones we have. In fact, that God meets our needs. And today we'll start it today as I talk about getting our needs met. Let's go ahead and pray first. Father, we thank you for the opportunity again to study your word, and I do pray that throughout this series that we come to some understanding about how you meet needs, especially the ones within our souls, the ones that we probably need met the most. And Father, I just pray that you would help us to comprehend some things here today. And as we get into this series, and Lord, I just pray that you would give us understanding so that those that are in most needs can be met. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, when God created the human race, mankind, if you would, He created us with needs that only He can sufficiently meet. He created us specifically with needs that only He Himself can specifically and sufficiently meet. Those needs would create a dependency upon God in which He would have the opportunity to express His love toward us by meeting them. Of course, we could talk about our physical needs from food and clothing and so forth, but in this series we're going to focus more on the emotional side of things. Because in essence, if we don't get the emotional needs met, the physical needs don't seem to be as helpful as much as it is when we get the emotional needs met. When we get our emotional needs met, we can be less a lot of things and be okay. But when the emotional needs aren't met, we can have an abundance of everything and still be miserable. And many people are living like that here in our world today. Even born-again Christians, unfortunately. It's not supposed to be like that, but it is in too many cases. And we're going to focus on how God meets those emotional needs. Now, some of those needs include such things as, of course, affection. We have a need to be loved, don't we? We have a need to have affection put towards us. Of course, we have a need of attention. In other words, that somebody cares that we actually exist in this world. We have a need for approval or encouragement, if you would. Who doesn't need to be encouraged from time to time from God's Word or from other things? We need acceptance. We need to be accepted for who we are, with all the quirks and all the different flaws that we have. We need that acceptance. We need admiration. In other words, we need to feel special. We have a need to feel special to somebody. We have also the application. In other words, we have a need of purpose in life. That our lives are not an accident. Our lives have value. They have meaning. They have a reason why they're here. Application. And of course, we need assurance. In other words, we need hope. We need hope. That even if today stinks, tomorrow can be better. Even after we die, that there's something better than just the ground. That's what people need more than anything. And that is what people are not getting in the average church today, unfortunately. They're getting entertained to death. They're going through a bunch of rituals, but these needs are not being met. And even born-again Christians are missing this stuff, and they come to church and they can put on the show, but when they go out, they're carnal and they're worldly. Why? Because their needs haven't been met by God Himself. And these needs I mentioned here can only be met by God consistently and perfectly. No one else. And these needs would be met as people build a meaningful, intimate relationship with their Creator. That's how they get met. Again, that was God's intent from the beginning, to have that kind of relationship with every individual. It mentions in several spots, but it's mentioned well here in Jeremiah 30, verse 22, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your God. Notice the relationship here. There was a relationship connection that God wants with His people. He wants them to be His people, and He wants to be our God. That's what He wants. That's why that was His intent for all of mankind from the very beginning. However, something came into the whole equation that ripped that all up. And that was sin. You know, we live in a day where sin is so dumbed down, so watered down, like it's a big joke. Oh, it's just a little sin here, just a little illicit sex, just a little alcoholism, just a little drug abuse, just a little white lie, just a little this. Let me tell you something, every one of those sins is a crime against God according to His Word. That may sound real blunt, but it's the truth. But that's why sin has been looked at in our day. But sin is actually quite destructive. The Bible says when sin is finished, it bringeth forth death. For the wages of sin is death, Romans 6:23. Sin is a serious thing. And sin drove a serious wedge between us and God. To the point it put a wall between us and God. Isaiah 59 verse 2, but your iniquities or sins have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid His face from you, that He will not hear. This is what sin has done initially to every human being. Put a wedge between us and God. A big wall of separation that does not enable us to naturally communicate to God like we would and that we need. Hence, mankind lives naturally independent of God, doesn't he, or she? And that is something that we were not created to do because we're not equipped to do it. The only one that is self-sufficient is God Himself. He's the only one that's self-sufficient. Hence, He's God. He didn't equip us to be self-sufficient. He made us dependent. But yet so many are living independent of Him. Because that sin wall has not been eradicated in their life. We'll talk about that more later. But as a result of that wedge that has been put in between us and God, it required mankind to resort to alternative means to quench his heart's yearning for His inner needs. Alternative means, something different. Something that's in this world. Something that's that can just fill that inner black hole, if you will. However, none of those means can sufficiently meet those needs like God. Not a single last one of them. And many people have tried multiple things and have the means to make multiple things available to them to try to meet those needs, but they fail. Again, many people live with a black hole in their heart, figuratively speaking. There's a black hole there. And they continually throw things in there, don't they? Continually throw things into that hole, trying to suffice that inner longing, that inner need for those things that I mentioned a moment ago, whether it was approval, attention, acceptance, affection, admiration, all that kind of stuff. They will throw so many things into that hole, hoping that fill that void they feel within inside, only to continually come up empty and short and dissatisfied. And guess what happens? That hole does not get smaller, it just gets bigger. It's never enough. Whatever it is, they are seeking outside of God Himself to fill it. The hole just gets larger. Yeah, Proverbs 27, verse 20 mentions, well, health and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. I think it was J.D. Rockefeller was asked one time, when is it enough? And as far as earning money, he said, oh, just one more dollar. Just one more dollar. It was never enough. Just one more dollar. I've used this illustration before. It's actually in one of our tracks. But Tom Brady, I think the superstar quarterback from the New England Patriots, a while back, after he had won 3 Super Bowl rings, was interviewed on 60 Minutes. And he made this statement, why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me? I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey man, this is what it is. What you got? I reached my goal, my dream, my life. I think though, man, it's got to be more than this. It's got to be more than this. I mean, this can't be what it's all cracked up to be. Quote unquote. You can go online and find that article. And the interviewer, Steve Croft, said, well, what's the answer? Rich Brady replied, I wish I knew, I wish I knew. You know, you look at it and say, oh wow, yeah, here's a guy with multi-million, he'll be a Hall of Famer. He's won, what, 2 more Super Bowls since that time? but yet still saying, it doesn't fulfill me. It does not fulfill me. But it's not uncommon. It's very common. People looking for answers regarding how to get their innermost need. And the world has so many things it tries to offer people as a means to satisfy those needs. And most people are pursuing one of several things. These are some of the more common ones to meet those inner needs that I mentioned a moment ago. Number one, relationships. Relationships. This one's huge. In our story here, we have a lady. We didn't read it. Well, I'll read it right now. Jesus, as she was asking for this water, Jesus is going to address some issues in her life. It says in verse 16, Jesus saith unto her, Go, call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands. And he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that says thou truly. He said, I've had 5 husbands. You've had 5 husbands, and you're living with one. She was, in biblical times, the Liz Taylor of those days. I mean, going from guy to guy to guy. What was she looking for going into relationships? That's what she's looking. She was convinced that if she had a man, she would be fulfilled. But I married this guy. He promised me everything, but he was a loser, so I got rid of him. And then I got this guy. Oh, he's a loser. Get rid of him. And I got this guy. This goes through 5, 6 times. Common denominator was lady. Think about it for a moment there. What was the problem? She was putting stock in another person to meet her inner needs. And guess what? There is no person on planet Earth that can do that. Not a single person. Because everybody's a sinner and everyone will fail at some point. Even the best of people. Relationships, though, that is a very big thing. If I just have that boyfriend, if I just have that girlfriend, if I just have that husband or wife, or just have whatever, some relationship, they're convinced that that's what the missing part. And you look at the average movie today, not that I advocate a lot of them, but it's like, that's all it's about. And they put this picturesque thing that took them 30 takes just to get that scene right. As if this person, if I could just find that guy that's in that movie. Guess what? He doesn't exist because he ain't real. Believe it or not. Or she's not real. Whatever it might be. Relationships. I just got it. Yeah. This woman tried 6, or she tried 5. She's on her 6, and it doesn't sound like she's doing very well. Does she? Number 2, pursuits. You know, America is called the land of opportunity because we've had so much freedom to be able to pursue so many different avenues, unlike many people in the world would get to. And I've been to some of those countries. Some of you have been with me in some of those places of the world that honestly, they don't have the avenues we do. I mean, most of them, I think of being out in that village out in Mongolia there, here, and out in the sticks there. You know what? Most of them are not going to rise above what some of you saw there in Mongolia. It was a third world country. But in our society, we've got an opportunity to build these fantastic careers, get as much education as you can possibly take in. You can become the greatest athlete in the world. And people have put a lot of stock in attaining those milestones you can attain in all these different areas of life in this country. You know, I remember when I was in the military, when I was in basic training, we had one of the commanding officers say, hey, go out, get an education, make something of yourself. Like, that's the goal. That's the goal. You get out there and get a big job and retire wealthy and all that, and that's the American dream, if you would. But yet, how come so many who have attained so much and attain all these positions have so many problems? And they come out in all these different periodicals and social media posts and things like that. It's like, obviously something's not being met. And you can take all these different avenues, and some of them we've all tried. I've tried all of them too before I came to know Christ. And you come to bomb out. It's like, this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Kind of like Tom Brady here. You know, I got everything I could ever ask for, and yet I'm still, something's missing inside. But people try pursuits. They live their life to achieve some sort of temporal goal, which they may or may never even get. So I'll just work really hard. There are a lot of people that have worked really hard in their lives and never achieved their goals. A lot of people. Hard work doesn't even guarantee it. Hard work puts you in a position to, but doesn't always mean you're going to get it. And when they don't get those things, man, it's life is just wow. I think I saw on the news here, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a skater that didn't make a team, and she was just having the Winter Olympic team of the U.S., and she was just having a fit about it. Why? Because making that team was going to meet her need, and she didn't make it. Guess what? You know, social media, wonderful internet give people platforms to bellow out anything that they want. A lot of people are doing that today. But the pursuits, materialism and money, number 3. Again, I think many of us have heard of retail therapy, right? So you may have practiced it recently, right? Oh, I feel so bad, I was going to go buy something. Oh, it makes me feel better if I just go out and buy something. It makes me sick sometimes I'd rather go buy something. Or just the attainment of stuff. Of course, we have the opportunity in our nation more than ever to be able to attain just about anything we want, whenever we want, just with the click of a button. You know, Amazon makes it real easy, right? Just one click, right? One click, and it'll be at your doorstep as fast as you want it. Materialism, though. Like, the more you have is what's going to make you happy. And some people have attained a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. From boats, to jet skis, to snowmobiles, to lake cabins, to multiple properties, to whatever they could ever wish. Doesn't it make you sick how much people have to spend and still have well more than they'll ever spend left over? But for some, that's the end goal. And that's what's supposed to make them happy. Yet there are those with all that stuff that act anything but happy, do they? Or as if they act as if they have their needs met. I know what some of you are thinking. I'd rather have their problems than mine, right? But trust me, that amount of money brings a lot of problems you probably wouldn't want more than you realize. But I'm just saying people use that at this time. Number 4, escapes. Escapes. Of course, people use things like addictive substances like drugs and alcohol. That's very common. You know, a lot of people use, we have a society that's hung up on booze. And why do people get drunk and all that kind of stuff? Because they want to forget their problems. That's why they do it. I've been around enough people who, not that I hang out in these places, but I remember in the military, guys would get that way, and all of a sudden the truth serum would come out, and they'd just start, everything would start, coming out, how miserable they were. But the booze gave them a chance to forget it all. But there's other types of escapes too, like entertainment, pleasures. People amuse themselves to death. Why? Because it helps them check out of reality. Just check out of reality. I just can't handle it anymore. We can't face reality, so we'll entertain ourselves to death. And we live in a metro area that you can be entertained 24/7 practically. You can do so many different things, all in the same night if you really want to. But these things allow for a short space of time when things can be forgotten. But in some regards, some of these things can be highly addictive and destructive, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Number 5. This is one you probably wouldn't think. And maybe you never considered. But with number 5, I would call it something I would call rigid religiosity. Rigid religiosity. So what do you mean by that? Sometimes people find pseudo-satisfaction in even being perceived as spiritual. It's a pride issue. I'm somebody who used to go to church all the time. And it's all about, they like to put on a show of how spiritual they really are. See, that was the Pharisees' problem. In fact, go to Matthew 23. Jesus confronted it so bad. We were rigid religiosity. Jesus makes a statement here in Matthew 23. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, speaking of the Pharisees, that's in Moses, see verse 2, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. Notice that. Critical. It's a rigid religiosity. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. In other words, they put on an outward show that there's something spiritual. And they love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. In other words, they enjoy the perception of being something spiritual. They enjoyed the attention and the respect that they got for having a facade about them. Well, within they were, as Jesus said, dead man's bones. Their heart wasn't right. And they loved to be seen of men. The woman in our text was religious. In fact, you go to back to chapter number 4 of the book of John. Chapter number 4. We see in verse 19, the woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Well, let's pivot and go in a different direction. Let's get off that multiple husband thing. Let's go to this. Our fathers worship in this mountain. We've got the right worship. And ye say that in Jerusalem is a place where men ought to worship. And then she pivots the corner here a little bit and said, you know what, we're going to talk about this. See, the rigid religiosity, the religious person, if you would, they take great pride in dotting every I and crossing every T and are glad that others find out what they don't do and what they do do. That's where they get there. You know, it's all about standards. I'm all for righteous standards. Not as a means, though, to proclaim myself as being somebody super spiritual. I hope you understand what I'm getting at here today. What they tend to be is very self-righteous. They look down on others, not as quote-unquote separated as they think that they are. You know, I don't do that as that other person does. And it gives them a sense of that evil. And often they have a deceived humility. In other words, they think that they're humble when they're not. I'm just a lowly servant. They often strain at gnats while they swallow their own camels. They'll stare at something minute that is so frivolous and so completely ridiculous. And, oh yeah, we better make sure we cross our T right there and dot our I right there. You know, but at the same time too, they'll swallow the whole thing. I've seen some people so stuck on outward standards, but they don't soul win. They don't hardly tithe. They don't try to reach anybody for Jesus Christ. They don't pray. They don't do some of the basic fundamental stuff. But oh yeah, they've got a certain look about them and a certain image that they like to hold on to, and that is wrong. That's exactly like a Pharisee was. But they have this, but that rigid religiosity is what means an inner need of their heart, just like the Pharisees. They like to be seen of men. They like the attention that it brought them. When it's all about standards and nothing about the heart. And I've seen enough of them fizz out over the years to know that that's not the way to go. Because it's more about what they do and keeping up appearances versus who they are actually on the inside. And that matters the most. Because who you are on the inside will come out on the outside. The rigid religiosity people, they're proud, cold, and very difficult to deal with oftentimes because they're so much involved in maintaining an outward image that they get difficult to deal with. And they tend to be very angry, critical, unreasonable people to deal with. You know, there's other areas we can talk about, but so many have reached the pinnacles of possibility in these areas. However, they don't offer us much hope that they've been satisfied. You know, you look at the average life of a celebrity, I don't necessarily recommend that you spend a whole lot of time doing that, but it's not hard because it gets thrown in our face every day. But look at how unstable their lives are. Look at how unstable it is. Just a mess. It's just a mess. As a result, people struggle in life and live in a state of insecurity. They really do, in all these areas of life. They're very insecure. Insecurity simply means, and what I mean by that is that they live in a constant anxiety and doubt about their needs being met and will do anything necessary and within their power to maintain those things, even to the point of compromising their moral well-being. Think about all those things. All those avenues which people talk about. The rigid religious person is scared to death to be found out for who they really are. It's always about keeping up image. Always about that. And they're scared to death that you find out who they really are. The materialistic person, the money-seeking person, they're scared to death about losing their money. Why? Because that's what they're holding on to get their needs met. The pursuing people, well, of course, they're scared to death that they're not going to reach their goal. Or somebody else is going to beat them. They live in that constant turmoil of insecurity. Anxiety and doubt that their needs are going to be met. And will, within their power, do what they have to do to maintain those things, even to the point, at times, of compromising their moral well-being. Take the Britney Spears and the Miley Cyruses of the world. They've done some outlandish things, Pastor. Yeah, I know. You know why? Because when they were young, they were told that they were something special. They got all this attention. They got all this stuff. Well, guess what? As they got older and people moved on to other people. Well, wait a minute. What about me? What about me? You told me I was just as great. Yeah. You're old news, girlfriend. Okay, I'll start doing some crazy stuff. What happened? These people aren't getting their needs met anymore through that avenue. To the point where they're in a position where they'll just do something absolutely bizarre. Strange. You know, that's why people in our day and age do such strange things to their body and their hair. It's because they're screaming, I need attention. Because I've got needs that are not being met. I understand sometimes they think, well, you fucking freaks, you know. Well, they may be doing some freaky things, but that's why they're doing it. That is why they're doing it. Because they're empty inside. And people will do outlandish things just to need attention. I think about Tom Brady, I mentioned a moment ago. Wasn't it a year or two ago, what was it called, the Deflategate? Where evidently he was behind some balls being deflated. I guess it makes it easier for the receivers to catch. I'm not sure. But he got suspended for that and so forth. Why? Because he has to win. He has to win. Well, guess what? The time's coming where he's not going to play anymore. I'm not Wilson. What's it going to be then? Again, people will do things even against their moral well-being just to maintain whatever it is they're grasping towards so that those needs get met. Whether it's cheating, stealing, doing things immorally, doing something outlandish, if that's what gets the need met, that's what they'll do. And sometimes it goes to great extremes. Great extremes. You know, some have even gone to the point of taking other people's lives. I mean, that's how serious this is. Very serious. And whenever something people rely upon to meet their inner needs is threatened or lost, they experience some sort of negative emotional response: anger, depression, and fear. As a result, we'll do whatever is necessary, regardless of how outlandish and wrong it becomes, just to maintain whatever it is that is meeting their need. Hence, people live shackled lives to circumstances working in their favor and people not failing them. Well, I'm sorry to say, the world isn't a safe space. You can't protect yourself from reality. Nobody can control either of those things. None of us have control of circumstances. None of us have control of what other people do. We were not given that power. Depending upon people and depending on things working out in life just cannot be a constant reality. Job said in Job 14:1, "Man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble." That's the reality. Psalm 39 verse 5 says, "Behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth, and my age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity." Selah. The best that we have going for us is still vain in the eyes of God. And we've dealt with people. I'm sure everybody here has at some point had somebody that's close to you that has let you down. And sometimes they have let you down hard. Well, guess what? That's reality. That's reality. But people live day to day depending upon people and circumstances to get their needs met. And as a result, they live insecure. In other words, with constant anxiety and doubt about not getting those needs met, or else losing that thing that they grasped onto to meet their inner needs, which in time will ultimately fail at some point. What I'm addressing is part of the reasons why marriages fail. Because people get into marriage expecting that the other will meet their need and find out that they don't. This is why other relationships will falter. This is why people live bitter and fearful, and they lack a lot of joy, because they're depending on things that they cannot depend upon to meet the inner needs of their heart. There's a longing in the heart that isn't being met, and will never be met from other sources other than God. Now, in our text this morning, we're introduced to a lady who is a reflection of the average person. She's called the woman at the well, she's known as, but she's a Samaritan lady, a person who was considered a half-breed, if you will. She was half Jewish, half Gentile. And the Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans. We see in verse 9, as she was talking to Jesus, she was surprised that he would talk to her even, because she was a Samaritan and he was a Jew, and they didn't have dealings with each other. The Jews were very prejudiced against the Samaritans. But Jesus saw no distinction between anybody. What he saw was a human being there who has needs that weren't being met, that he wanted to go ahead and meet. Hence the conversation takes place in which Jesus offers this lady living water that we read a moment ago. And this water that Jesus would offer this lady would quench the inner thirst within her soul and will quench our inner thirst as well. Look at verse 14. He says, "But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be," notice the next two words, "in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life." In other words, inside. The emotional, the inside parts of us. It says this water is going to quench the thirst on the inside, the emotional well-being. Like a well of water that bubbles over, he is there to meet and quench the thirst that our souls have. In fact, in John 6:35, we want a quick flip there, we're almost done here today. Jesus said unto another group, "I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst." Of course, reiterating the thirst aspect, but bringing into the fact the hunger aspect. Things that we are well acquainted with physically, but we certainly have emotionally and spiritually. Jesus came so people didn't hunger, didn't thirst after things that will never fulfill them. And people are hungry and thirsty for their inner needs to get met. And Jesus came to meet those needs. Go to John chapter 7 and verse 37. Jesus at a feast, he stands up and speaks very boldly. He says here, John 7:37, in the last day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried, saying, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the Scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. In other words, a continual spring of thirst-quenching water for the emotional thirst of the soul. And that's exactly what Jesus was offering this lady, and what he offers anybody who comes to him. And maybe today you're like that woman, verse 15, back in John 4, where she said unto him, Sir, give me this water. Give me this water. How do you get that water, so to say, for your inner soul? Well, it starts by getting into an actual relationship with God and dealing with the wedge that's between you and God. That happens when a person is saved, when they're born again, according to the dictates of the Scriptures. In order to be saved, you have to be willing to accept the two terms of salvation. First up, you must come to the point where you realize you're lost, that your sin has offended God, but you're willing to turn or repent of that sin with all your heart and change direction back towards God. And by faith, the second term, you're willing to trust Jesus Christ 100% to pay for your sin. Not yourself anymore, like I did for 20 years of my life, but Him alone. And the day you're willing to accept those terms, you can call upon the Lord and ask Him to save you. Romans 10:13 says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And that eradicates the sin wedge between us and God and reestablishes a relationship with us and Him. So many people don't get their needs met because they've never had that first step. They've never been saved. They've never dealt with the sin between them and God. Salvation deals with that sin, and it opens the doors back up to a relationship with Him. A person gets repositioned with God in a relationship and provides the opportunity for us to begin to get our needs met. For me, that took place on April 4th of 1999. I realized I was a lost, hell-bound sinner. I wasn't good enough to earn my way to heaven. But I realized that Jesus died for me so that my sins could be paid for with His blood. And I turned from my sin with all my heart to God with all my heart and trusted Him alone to save me. And I got a new relationship with God, something I hadn't had before. Though I had gone to church, though I had been baptized, though I had been confirmed, though I had done those things, it was only on that day that I come to realize what a real relationship with God was like. Now, after a person's saved, though, sometimes they say, well, Pastor, my needs still aren't getting met. And that's something we're going to address in this series because I know that's a big problem. Is that people get saved and, oh yeah, this is great, whatever. But over the course of time, their inner needs aren't getting met inside. And they go back to the very things that all lost people pursue. The pursuits, the careers, the relationships, the money, the materialism, even the religiosity aspect. And they can't figure out why they're so empty. And this is why why there can be carnality in the life. This is why there are people that get out of the will of God. This is why people get disgruntled and dissatisfied with church. All this stuff. Why? Because they have never learned how to foster and grow a real intimate relationship with God after they've been saved. And this is something we're going to deal with through the course of this series, primarily. It's how you can build that relationship so that you can get those needs met, so you don't have to chase all those things that are out there, so that you can live with security, not insecurity, and live victoriously. I've seen enough Christian people bomb out throughout the time I've been saved to realize this is a very serious issue. I want to help everyone here today so you finish your course faithfully, that you fulfill the will of God for your life so that you can live with purpose and meaning and not be subject to the whims out there, because the whims aren't getting any easier. They're only going to get harder. But we are, as long as we're rooted and grounded in Him and have that relationship built in Him, we'll have the security enough in our own personal life to be able to deal with that and confront reality in a way that's profitable instead of so destructive. Is God meeting your need today? He can and wants to. And through this series, we'll see more how we can. Let's quietly stand to our feet this morning. We'll just have a brief word of invitation here today. Just an opportunity for you to speak to God. Nobody's going to come to you. Nobody's going to do anything. Just what we're going to do here is just ask every head bowed, every eye closed for just a few moments. Give people some privacy. With the answer going to play here, if God has spoke to your heart, I want to give you an opportunity to just spend some time in prayer with God. You can come down to this altar and pray if you like. You can stay there in your chair.